To our next session, which is a fireside chat on access to impact revolutionizing digital public goods. And may I invite the moderator, Mr. Saurabh Chandra, Senior Partner and FS Consulting, Ernst & Young. Huge round of applause for Mr. Saurabh Chandra. He's also a strategic advisor to Government of India regulators, CEOs, CXOs, industry associations, and conglomerates. With domains expertise in BFSI retail, VC and PE, technology and R&D, he has worked with BCG, JPMC, Visa, Amazon, and many other organizations. He has published 5 research papers, authored 2 books, and to his credit has 8 patents and trade secrets. And may I now invite the panelists, Mr. Jayesh Ranjan, IAS. He's a Special Chief Secretary to the ITE&C and Industries and Commerce Departments of the Government of Telangana. His assignment involves developing policy frameworks, attracting new investments, identifying opportunities for utilizing IT in various government processes, and promoting the digital empowerment of the citizens. Our next panelist is Mr. Shailesh Kumar, Chief Data Scientist, Center of Excellence, AI ML Geo. He is program mentor for AIDS program at the Geo Institute of Eminence and is visiting faculty at ISBRI. He has published over 20 international papers and book chapters and holds more than 30 patents in AI ML. He was recognized as one of the top 10 most influential analytics leaders in India in 2020 by Analytics India magazine. And I would also like to invite Mr. Shantanu Paul, founder, MD, CEO, TalentSprint. Paul brings depth to the conversation on leveraging tech education for digital governance and industry collaboration. Over to you, Mr. Chandra.
So first of all, thank you so much everyone for being kind and attentive. I know after a sumptuous lunch and with lots of friends around, it's difficult to hold the attention. Also, very illustrious panel. Thank you for taking the time out. Today we're going to talk about a very important subject. Knowingly, unknowingly, it touches all our lives, and especially for all the generations that we call about X, Y, Z today. We all have grown consuming that which is known as digital public goods. Just to give you a brief touch point of what it means, it's an open platform primarily to enable the financial and social inclusion. What it means, as a country, we are the front runners, arguably one of the best around the world. And you would be aware about the UPI. Today, there is 12.2 billion transactions we handle on UPI. There is a gem, which is government e-marketplace. We actually facilitate the trade of 3.5 lakh crores on that particular platform. There is a BharatNet project. There, approximately a high-speed broadband is there for 250,000 gram panchayats. And we have laid out a 5 lakh kilometers of optical fiber. And with lots more coming up, wherein we are not resting out here, we will be debating that how this is going to transform India and we become India for the world than just India. So that's the debate today, and we will pick few of insights from our illustrious panel here. So Mr. Ranjan, on that, maybe if I can start with you. We have a very important initiative with our state government, which is not only be for the state, but also for larger country and maybe to the world down the line, which is TDeX. Would you want to talk about how it is going to touch the financial inclusion and social life, and B, how you see that it becomes one of critical platforms down the line for the country and to the world?
Thank you. Thank you, Saurabh ji. Greetings to fellow panelists. Greetings to all the participants. So I'm glad that you picked out a real example from Telangana, the Telangana Data Exchange. But I'll go a little back in time. See, all of us know, in fact, in conferences like this expression is spoken quite frequently, that data is the new oil, data will make you rich, data is everything, which is of course true, not that there is any exaggeration in it, but many practical challenges are faced when one has to really use data in terms of just the basic issue of how do you access data, how to make the data qualitative, how to annotate the data, how do you intelligently make it available to people who have some ideas or some applications to test, and so on and so forth. So we have been working as a government for many years now in the areas of agriculture. You would all know that agriculture is one area where national government, state governments, everyone has spoken about this, that we want to double farmers' income, but in reality we are still far behind. And we have come to this conclusion that one way in which you can really achieve the goal of doubling farmers' income is to bring in technologies, because currently also, if you see the line of activities in every crop, major crops at least, you notice lots of inefficiencies, which keeps the production low, which keeps the productivity low, which keeps the incomes low, adds to the person's costs, adds to his losses. And therefore, the adoption of technology in an area, in a domain like agriculture is very important. So 7-8 years ago, we started looking at solutions. Where are the solutions available, or can someone create solutions? We realized that there are many people who are interested in it, because intervening in agriculture also creates a huge social impact. The largest number of rural livelihoods in our country today, either directly or indirectly, depend upon agriculture. But then when we started talking to young innovators, entrepreneurs, startups, the issue of data came. And besides doing other things, we decided that let us create a platform which now we call as TDeX, or Agriculture Data Exchange, through which people who are willing to test their solutions or create new solutions, or who want to reach out to the farmers for anything else also, like supplying inputs, supplying credit, supplying insurance, etc. This platform will be of use. And we also spent some time in creating a data management framework. Because today, while everyone is speaking about data, governments also are making data accessible. There are open data policies of several states, including our own state. But one of the concerns has also been, apart from the usual concerns of privacy and security and so on, is how do you not misuse the data from a commercial point of view. We have seen cases. In fact, there was a very publicized case some years ago when a large social media platform shared lots of data of its users, of its subscribers, with a polling agency, a polling analytical agency, which is very unethical. And obviously it was done for some commercial reasons. It's not done out of charity or anything. So we have created a data management framework where those who want to use it can use it. Of course, you have to anonymize it, you have to maintain all the privacy guardrails, etc. But one very important feature of the framework is that if you are benefiting commercially out of it, part of that has to be shared with people from whom this data was originally procured. So you cannot unilaterally benefit commercially from using this data, etc. So to cut a long story short, the TDeX platform is now seen as a very good case study. Others are emulating it. People have written about it. We have received some awards also for creating such a data exchange. So a few months ago, September last year in 24, coincidentally in exactly this hall, we had conducted the Global AI Summit. And when we did that Global AI Summit, we received lots of inputs, we got lots of suggestions. And one of the suggestions which came was that AI in particular requires humongous amount of data. And therefore the kind of data exchange that we have built for agriculture will be very useful for other domains as well. It could be healthcare, it could be mobility, it could be education, it could be livelihoods, any form of data on which use cases can be developed. So that has given rise to this idea that you create a data exchange across verticals, which we are calling TDeX. So your question actually has this kind of a background and backstory. We have not, it's a work in progress. We have not completed the development of TDeX, but the same set of people who helped us with ADEX, they are largely scientists from the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. They and a few others are working as a team to help us. And once it is ready, I'm very, very confident that it will be a model way in which you collate data, you improve the quality, you make it machine readable, you make it interoperable, but at the same time, you provide an easy access to people who want to use it using a very robust data management framework.
This is very interesting, and I'm sure many of the folks who aspire to be the fellow entrepreneurs, this is one of the biggest opportunity to contribute, earn, share, and touch lives. So thank you, Mr. Ranjan, for that. Mr. Paul, for you, since we have taken lots of strides in monetizing our data, and as a country, the social infrastructure, the economic infrastructure today enjoys that on everyday basis. There's lots that has happened in payment and fintech world. But with the new budget and policy of CBDC, how do you foresee the fintech disruption or innovation in times to come using technology and AI?
Thank you so much, Saurabh, and thank you so much to my fellow panelists for being here and the audience. I think even though it might appear that the fintech payment revolution is an enormous upswing, and I'll share some data with you in a few minutes, I think the headroom is even larger. So I think we are only scratching the surface of where we have been. Let me just recount some quick statistics from NPCI, National Payments Corporation of India. If you look at UPI, I think sort of you mentioned that if I just looked at the data for January 2025, 17 billion, that's billion with a B, transactions in the month of January. Now, I distinctly recall in November 2016, right after demonetization, at that time I was on the board, serving on the board of NPCI. We sat down, looked at the numbers, we were all jumping for joy for having touched 1 million, million with an M, transaction after demonetization. So from 1 million to a month to 17 billion is a long journey. And the aspiration that NPCI has been working on for the last 5 years is to get UPI to 1 billion a day, which is probably not more than 12 to 18 months away. So that is kind of, in some sense, the big success story. And I think if you look at the story of the number of users, I mean, getting to 1 billion a day is probably now at this point a matter of time. But if you look at the number of users, it's still 400 million people have UPI accounts, even though the country can probably get to 1 billion. Especially now the UPI circle and family members and so forth, even young people can be part of the UPI network. So getting to 1 billion users and 1 billion transactions a day is where the headroom lies. The other silent revolution in UPI, which people don't realize as much, perhaps, is the UPI QR code. This country has been trying to get financial inclusion for small and micro merchants for 50 years or 75 years since independence. And up until maybe 20, 25 years ago, the banks would get beaten up by Ministry of Finance and RBI for not being able to get more than 5 million POS machines out into the hand of merchants. But today we have close to 50 million QR code merchants. And the country apparently has 100 million merchants, so maybe getting to 100 million merchants along with 1 billion users is probably the headroom. And as you can imagine, there is still a long way to go. The other big revolution that has happened, in which UPI is probably everybody in this room is using UPI, so I'm sure that is very close to our hearts. But another silent revolution is the Aadhaar-enabled payment systems, which is helping getting DBT, direct benefit transfer from the government in the hands of people. Now, AEPS is not something that anybody in this room is using, I'm sure. But if you look at AEPS, that is about 500 million transactions in the month of January 2025. Now, that's a far behind the juggernaut of 17 billion of UPI, but 500 million transactions a month is nothing to sneeze at. So that is the other big revolution that we don't know about. The third part, which I think we should also remember, is FASTag. The National Electronic Toll Collection System is now clocking, if I think not mistaken, 400 million transactions a month. So you can see that all of these digital public goods have really caught on in the fintech space. And there's a lot more to come. right? So I don't want to get into too much detail in the opening comments, but to your point about where does CBDC take us, I think that's a whole different conversation. But CBDC to me is going to essentially just take us to the next level. We'll have instant settlements. The problem with UPI is the settlement is not instantaneous. That leads to other kinds of risk, systemic risk. People have to buy all kinds of liability insurance for non-settlement, but all that will go away once we have CBDC. But CBDC is not an unmixed blessing. It will come with lots of concerns about privacy and knowledge of various things. So, whole different topic by itself. But to summarize, I think I would say payments is an early indicator. Inspired by UPI today, we have ONDC, we have so many other health mission and so forth, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But I think UPI and NPCI has set a bar, which will be very, very interesting to approach. And I'm sure everybody is going to try their best to catch up to it. Last among them, I'll just close with this comment. I think DigiYatra is another big life-changing item that is probably affecting everybody in this room as well. And they are just, I think, clocking 15 million users right now. So very early days for them. Thank you.
Excellent. So I think a few of the questions that we generally get asked is that what's the future of fintech? You know, there is so much of regulatory policies, etc. coming, but I think what you said, Mr. Paul, since we deal with money, we have to be in check. But at the same time, is there a bright future? Of course, till the time we innovating. With that, if I come to you, Mr. Kumar, and Mr. Ranjan touched upon the TDeX. There was a recent study that was done on financial inclusion. And in 2014, we were at 48% of financial inclusion. And with various digital public goods, we have come to 73%. However, 33% of the accounts are untouched. They are open but non-operative. What it shows is that there is so much of India, which is at the rural sector, which is at the, not enjoying the urban benefits as few of us. So for that particular mass, if I touch upon agricultural part, extending it to what TDeX we are trying to do, how do you see further down the years, 4 to 5 years, with the advent of AI, what 5 possibilities that can actually bring them closer to mainstream and also help in the economic export and import on various of the food branches of life from India to the world?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to this conference, and thank you for making us part of this panel. So, this is an amazing time for India in many, many ways. We are very rich in terms of, use cases, in terms of data, in terms of talent. And I think with the kind of work we are doing across India and the state of Telangana, I'm pretty sure that we are going to really fulfill the ultimate promise of AI, which is that, it has to be a horizontal like electricity and fire at some point where it touches all of us in ways that we don't even think about electricity and fire anymore, right? And, being a horizontal, it is touching all the verticals, all the horizontals. I want to talk about a little bit on the I part of the DPI, which is really, if you think about what electricity has solved for, what 4G, 5G has solved for, what internet, TCP, IP has solved for, those are the infrastructures that are running the country. And those infrastructures have really solved for scale and interoperability. And I think AI is going to reach that level with projects like, the data layer that we are building. Today, data is not interoperable. AI is not interoperable. The output of one AI model doesn't go easily into another model. And the end-to-end from generation of data to analysis of data to operations on the ground, again, we need an integration mindset. So what I'm working on now is with state governments and in my role is to think about operating systems for different verticals. So what does it mean to build an agriculture operating system or a healthcare operating system or an education operating system or a smart city operating system? And often as data scientists, we think in terms of bottom up, building a model. But instead of that, how do we think in terms of top down and saying, how do we first think about the entire city and then build a stadium and a hospital as opposed to start bottom up, right? And I think this new thought process that has served us well in other infrastructures like electricity and railways and other things where we planned at a massive scale and then, different people contributed to it. Similarly, we need a similar mindset to say what is the AI master plan for India, not just in terms of use cases and individual components, but for me, there are 4 very important DPIs that I want to talk about. The first one is the data layer, which Jayesh sir talked about. And I think at a national level, we need that with all the qualities of the data infrastructure. Today also, a lot of doctors write handwritten notes. Students do their homework on a physical paper. And that is physical data. And if you do the math, the number of homeworks that students do per day in the world will generate more data than Google does in one day. But we don't digitize that, right? So the new paradigm is that AI is the first consumer of data, not a human. So not a teacher will not grade the student. A doctor will not look at the ECG report, or a radiologist will not. AI will be. So that is the AI first mindset with which we need 4 infrastructures. One is the data infrastructure. Second is what I call a marketplace for AI. And this is very important. Today, if you think about the rise of marketplaces, Ola, Uber is a marketplace, Zomato, Swiggy is a marketplace. So marketplaces bring consumers and producers together. And we have people in this room who are consumers of AI and people in this room who are producers of AI. But we don't have a marketplace to go to, where without knowing who is going to consume my model, I can still produce a model and put it in a marketplace. And somebody can consume it without knowing who produced the model. So we need one of the critical infrastructures I'm proposing is AI marketplace for India. The third one is the super apps. So today, if I look at a farmer, he has to go to one app to check the weather, another app to get an advisory, another app to order fertilizer. His life is very disintegrated. What if we created a super app for a teacher, a super app for a student, a super app for agriculture, a super app for an insurance company, a super app for a doctor? And I think, today if you look at your phones, we are carrying hundreds of apps, and the era of super apps is coming. And I think thinking about super apps, which will integrate all our user experiences and connecting all of us together and with technology is going to be a very big jump from where we are today. And the last one is obviously, the compute infrastructure that the country needs, and everybody is working on it, including Mr. Ambani and everybody through Prime Minister. So if we take care of these 4 infrastructure, the compute, the data, the super app, and the AI marketplace, they will really take us to the next level in the way we consume AI, produce AI, and monetize AI. Thank you.
This is very insightful, and in fact, I'm picking up this whole marketplace of models to feed each other. So I'm sure that a few of the entrepreneurs have started flexing their computer and muscles there, but something which will certainly add value to our nation. Mr. Ranjan, building on that, and one of very important subjects for us as well as for the world is healthcare. And with the current intent of insurance for all, having a centralized protocol wherein all entities from hospital to insurers to consumers come in and interact in the most unbiased fashion, and NDHM, National Health Exchange, coming in. How do you see the digital public infrastructure, if we forecast 5 years from now, can help states and governments bringing welfare to the life?
So, Saurabh ji, so the thing is, today is 11th. On 27th, exactly in this hall, we'll be hosting an event called BioAsia, where this question will be answered. We are actually setting up a digital health activator to do precisely that. So I won't like to kind of pre-disclose what should be disclosed on the 27th. But I'll also try to attempt the question that you asked Shailesh ji about the 1/4 of the population, which is away, the usage is only 77%. So what is the remaining, what is happening with the remaining 23%? So I'll speak a little about that, but then I'll give you some short answer to the health scenario as well. So again, see, eventually whatever happens, whatever else are the priorities, the most fundamental expectations from the government is that it will be inclusive. It will ensure that the fruits of development are spread to everyone, and anyone who is getting left out obviously is a matter of great concern to the government. So from the very beginning, ever since Telangana became a new state, we are noticing this and we are working on it, what we call as the digital divide, the concept of or the phenomena of digital divide. And there are two things which I would like to tell. So one is that the Fintech DPIs, the UPI and the AEPS, which have become so ubiquitous now, they all kind of became very prominent when this demonetization started, when suddenly large denomination currency notes were withdrawn from the system. So as a government, it became imperative on us also to start motivating people, particularly the working class people, the rural people, people who live in remote areas, to start using mobile transactions for doing all their financial work. But we also received lots of pushback at that time. In fact, the penetration of digital instruments, like your QR codes or the payment wallets, which are common now. In fact, as a government, we ourselves had introduced a payment instrument, which is called T-Wallet, which also took a while to become popular. Now it is pretty stable, but it took a while to become acceptable. One of the reasons was that around the same time, lots of stories used to come in popular media and television about scams, frauds. In fact, a very popular scam going on in those days, some of it continues even today, was your KYC scam. Like someone will call you pretending that he's doing this KYC checks. He will ask all kinds of questions. And then in that flow, he will ask your password also. And then after a while, you'll realize that everything from your account is gone. So cybersecurity, cyber awareness, cyber frauds, these also create some kind of a barrier to more and more penetration, more and more adoption of digital tools, fintech tools and others. So this is again something in which the government obviously has to take the main responsibility, but we need to work with all other stakeholders also. And obviously the next billion internet users will not be English speaking, will not have access to very costly devices. Most of them will be first generation kind of users, and we need to make the digital world, this entire world of DPIs, be it TDeX, be it ADEX or whatever else others are doing. We have to make it very, very easy to comprehend, easy to use, easy to plug in with least assistance. And if you're able to do that, then hopefully you will bridge digital divide, because all these do attempt to solve real life problems which people have been facing for generations altogether. So there is tremendous value in these solutions, but unless you make them foolproof, easy to use, and give the users this assurance that no scam is going to happen, everything will be safe, etc. But to quickly come back to the main question, I mean, I don't want to brush it under the carpet, but the fact is that National Digital Health Mission has promised much more than they have been able to deliver. The delivery is happening at a very, very minuscule pace. And some of us in the states feel that we have the wherewithal to accelerate it much faster. And fortunately, we have got a partner in the World Economic Forum, the WEF. So through multiple sessions and interactions and our recent meeting with them in Davos, it has been agreed upon that WEF will support us, Telangana government, in showcasing how NDHM-like models can be fast-tracked, can actually start producing. So you gave insurance as an example, which is a good example, but various other things also. How do you maintain health records? How do you make the health records accessible to any healthcare provider? How do you also do some kind of a predictive analysis? For example, in a particular segment of the population, if your analytics show that this particular disease pattern is prevailing, how do you take preventive measures? How do you take public health related decisions based on that? So, I mean, if you are around on the 26th, I gave the wrong date. The BioHYSEA is actually on 25th and 26th. So if you are here on the 25th, you will learn quite a lot about how the digital health activator is starting here in Hyderabad.
This is fantastic, and I think need of the hour. We certainly are one of important nations when it comes to good doctors, good healthcare facility, and now many companies are trying to innovate in the country. But I think one important takeaway, 25th, 26th is the day to learn more. And if you are a startup enthusiast, generally people ask me that the healthcare regulations are so strict and I'm wary of starting something in that. I would suggest that start looking forward to it. That's the next area of growth for all of us. With that, Mr. Kumar, if I may come in, and Mr. Ranjan touched upon a very important topic of cyber frauds and the digital crimes. With lots of technology advancements, and especially with AI, ML models, machine learning, Gen AI, agentic, robotic, there's lots that going towards machines. And there is very little that happens in terms of protecting those machines. It's more about developing those machines. So for you, from your vantage point, and if I take cyber as a theme, pure cyber, and I was told that Israel as a country has one of the most advanced cyber hub at a country level that keeps the panopticon on. So if you have to think from the cyber viewpoint at a country level, how do you see 5 emerging trends that if we incubate or execute will help us get safeguarded as a nation? Yeah.
Both of us can answer, yeah? All right, so I think, it has to be a multi-layered cybersecurity approach, right? So I think being in a digital world, and because data is the new oil, the first threat is to the data itself. And, right now, every month we are getting a report that some big amount of bank accounts or credit card data is stolen and all that. So stealing of data is becoming one of the very important problems for CIOs. And what the hackers do now is they pretend like a normal user. They go in, they pretend very normally as a normal user, take out a little bit of data here, little bit of data there, and over years they will consume a lot of data, and then an email will go to the CEO that we are ready to sell your data to the black market, otherwise pay this, right? So we've seen news like this, Yahoo gets hacked, Amex gets hacked, and obviously hacks are happening all the time. We are only hearing about the ones that have happened, not hearing about the ones that have been prevented, right? And so it's a big problem. One is the data hack is happening. The other is the API level hacks are happening all the time, right? Hackers are coming in through your APIs and causing a lot of problems. Cybersecurity in Fintech domain is a very big problem. We all know that once somebody takes away your account, very quickly, within a minute or two, lots of transactions happen. I think one of the layers that UPI and others have to think through is the fraud prevention and all that. And there are many techniques now, outlier detection and all of that, that can be done in this area. Within this thing you should be able to catch. So fraud is one area which is very important. Then within the finance domain, money laundering is a very big area. Today we see a lot of illegal money transfers happening with tax code and the government trying to put more restrictions. People are innovating new ways to figure out how to break that, right? So I think with graph theoretical approaches and a lot of AI algorithms, it is possible to catch flow of money and all that. So I think there are many, many areas. And with quantum, new levels of threat will emerge where we won't be able to sustain that. In the beginning, we'll see a lot of problems with quantum, crypto and all of that. And we'll have to figure out our way through that also. So I think this is a constant, predator-prey scenario. We become better, they become better. We keep growing and helping each other grow. And I think this is something that should be constantly on our mind. It's not like we can lower our guard. Then there are other areas like, misuse of data for wrong reasons, right? I can take your data to build a credit score for you, but I can also sell that data to an insurance company who can do wrong things, right? A school is collecting data on students, for example, they can sell it to employers, right? So I think this level of partitioning of data is very critical, and regulatory frameworks are coming to take care of those kind of things also. Then the fairness and bias issues and privacy issues. So it's a whole spectrum, not just cyber, but also at a data level, at a application level, we need to be careful. And I think generally we think of these issues as an afterthought. When damage is already done, this is what happened with the nuclear energy, for example. Once we destroyed the two cities, we came up with non-proliferation treaty, right? And so on and so forth. Same thing will happen with AI also. We will misuse AI before we will start using it, and we have already started to see misuses. So I think regulation is generally 5 years behind, but the speed at which AI is going, we need to keep up with that and make sure we anticipate the misuses of AI. That is another kind of threat that we have to worry about, right? So yeah, I think it's a very comprehensive area, and we should look at it from all angles.
No, very interesting, and you touched upon a very important point, which is data misuse. And Mr. Paul, if to extend this further, if I bring the lens of current DPDP Act that is under socialization and the Privacy Act, which is a part of it, if as a country and nation, there is one emerging trend wherein we can develop and safeguard ourselves from this act and lenses, how do you see that trend emerging and what that would be from your vantage point?
Sure. I think this is a very detailed and complex question. I think DPDP Act is, we've had GDPR in Europe for a while, and I think the arrival of the DPDP Act is a very necessary and important step in the evolution of our digital journey as a country, right? So that's, without a question, the right step in the right direction. I think human beings by nature always favor convenience over safety. So the history of technology is that people will buy into convenience, surrender data unwittingly, and then that will be monetized and that will be held against us, it will be stolen. So in some sense, technology brings with us great convenience. Humans love convenience, and in the process, we lose data, we lose information, we become vulnerable to technology-based attacks. So in some sense, there is an old saying in engineering called, today's problems come from yesterday's solutions. So if you've done something well in the past, it's probably creates some problems that you have to solve today, right? And that's essentially the nature of this problem. So I would say that in many ways, this is a problem here to stay. I think technology will be the answer to this problem as well. We will have to learn to protect ourselves. We need more education, we need more training, and of course, we need great technology to protect this from us. I'll give an example of how much effort is being put in the digital payment space in this area, right? As of all of you know, every time you open the newspaper, you see this one more case of UPI fraud, and somebody has been, a victim of a digital UPI fraud, and money has moved out of their account, and and now we see digital arrests. So there's a whole bunch of things you see all the time in terms of fraud. Now the problem that we have today is that the success we've had is that we're heading towards 1 billion transactions a day. And if you know UPI, there is send and collect. Now send transactions are still okay, but collect transactions are deadly. I mean, that's where elderly people are falling prey to a lot of the fraud that is happening. But imagine the problem that we have, which is to say that if you provide a very, very tight control, a lot of valid transactions will get stopped, which will be a user experience problem. And if all of us have every third transaction trying UPI stopped because it's potentially a risky or a fraudulent transaction because the AI is cutting it off at a very high threshold, we'll all get annoyed and stop using UPI because we want the convenience of, by and large assured transactions. So you can't set a threshold of very high that says that, flag everything that looks remotely suspicious. Amber is not good enough. It has to be red before you stop it, otherwise you kill UX, right? But on the other side, if you set the bar very low, a lot of fraudulent transactions will go through, and then we lose faith in UPI again. So either it's a user experience problem, or it's a security problem, or a safety problem. Getting this right between these two extremes, titrating, is a very difficult position. And you can imagine that no human intervention will work. 1 billion transactions a day, even if 0.1% of them are actually fraudulent, that's 1 million transactions. No human system can possibly handle 1 million transactions. So it has to be technology assisted enabled. And AI is again playing a role in flagging these issues. So, but there are entire teams of people working on these problems. And I'm just taking one example, right? The same thing will happen. Imagine when we have AI-based voice over UPI in vernacular languages, which is, I think, going to be unleashing. I think even Jayesh talked about this, that when you enable vernacular languages on UPI, what will happen is that we'll just get a huge, sort of quantum leap in payments. But imagine the fraud that can happen there. So in all of this, we have to be very, very cognizant of the fact that there is no free lunch, right? We want technology to give us massive scale. We want DPI. We have to pay the price in terms of education, in terms of technology, and in terms of eternal vigilance, which I think is inevitable. So.
Yeah, no, and very interesting. Since we are on top of I know the debate and insights are very, very exciting. But one last question before we give it back to our MC. When we are talking about digital public goods, and with so much of exponential growth in financial inclusion and social inclusion, and enabling trade and welfare, as a policy, how do you see that we can be ahead in the curve, wherein not only the development of these goods are sustainable, but also they iteratively become better with time?
No, definitely. So this is the hallmark of how in Telangana we approach policy making. One is that it's very inclusive. All stakeholders are involved. We even take inputs from basic startups and everyone else, academicians. There have been AI frameworks, etc., where Shailesh ji has given lots of contribution on behalf of Geo Institute. So one is to get ideas and potential partnerships from everyone. The second is, as a government, our responsibility is to eventually ensure that technology benefits every person, the last citizen. So how do you build in features through which that policy becomes accessible, affordable, etc., which I spoke about. And the third is, of course, don't treat any policy as if it is cast in stone. Be very open-minded, be very flexible. So we had introduced our AI framework in 2019. But when we conducted our Global AI Summit last year, we found lots of things have advanced, rapid advancement of knowledge is happening all around us. So therefore, not that we have ditched that, but we have supplemented it by creating an AI roadmap. So that is how we should be, we will be potentially ahead of the curve.
So with this, one very key takeaway, if I aggregate all the nuances of insights that we discussed: inclusivity, enabling innovation for growth. That is what Telangana is driving via Hyderabad and rest of Telangana for India, for the world. And every one of you, this is most exciting time. People said that 2010 and 9 or 9 and 11 was the time of startup growth, innovation. But I think it's starting now. So keep your gray cells on. There is so much to contribute to. With that, I think one last comment from Mr. Kumar.
AI is as much a technology as it is a mindset. And if I look at the potential of AI to transform all sectors, one of the mindset to think about is, imagine if healthcare, agriculture, education were born post-AI era, what would they look like? If we think like that, we will completely transform these verticals. If we keep thinking, how will I put AI on top of the legacy of 200 years old system, we will not create a disruptive solution. With that, I just want to...
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much, the esteemed panel. And I'll hand it over to the MC.
Thank you so much, sir, and thank you all the panelists. Before you take your seats in the audience, I would request you to please remain here. And may I invite Mr. Vinay Agarwal, Global Head Business HR Tech Mahindra, and Executive Committee Member HYSEA, to please felicitate the moderator and the panelists. The mementos are presented by HYSEA and ICICI Bank. Thank you so much for your time, sir, and being with us here for this panel discussion today. This one, I really want to hear louder claps. Thank you. Thank you for your time, sir. And thank you for being with us here today.